Given the choice, would you travel back in time to murder a tyrant before he becomes one? To prevent a war, to save countless lives, to balance the scales of history? Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, a classic 90s action RPG, explores this very moral dilemma, and in doing so deceives the player into becoming the catalyst for a genocide. This is a tale of deception, time travel, paradox, and war. This is when Kain the vampire met William the Just. Early in Kain's quest to kill the guardians of the Pillars of Nosgoth, and having already failed to best Malak of the Sarafan, the guardian of the Pillar of Conflict, he seeks out and finds an audience with the Oracle of Nosgoth. Travelling through the labyrinthine passages of the Oracle's cave, Kain finally gets to seek the advice of the old soothsayer. However, before he gets his guidance, the Oracle shares a seemingly unrelated vision. The advance of the dark armies of the Nemesis, the domination of Nosgoth, the fallow King Otmar of Willendorf. A man too consumed by grief over his daughter's condition to halt the war that is to come. Kain, in his hubris, dismisses the visions as babble and proceeds on his quest. Much like a sleight of hand trick, the moment passes without explanation and left unacknowledged by Kain and unexplained to the player. The game leaves us to ruminate on its meaning just long enough before letting us completely forget. Both player and Kain alike unaware that the seeds of deception have now been planted. Much later in the game, Kain finds himself wandering the marble-clad halls of Avernus Cathedral. Supposedly by chance, this is where he first encounters the legendary Soul Reaver blade that would become forever intertwined with his own destiny.
Time fades even legend, and the origin of Soul Reaver has been lost long ago. But its purpose remains, to feed on the souls of any creature it strikes. Kindred, this blade and I.
Having beheaded Azimuth the Planar, guardian of the Pillar of Dimension, Kain takes his leave of Avernus, but not before stumbling upon a time-streaming device.
It will deliver you in time.
Another artifact of significant importance, and yet seemingly another coincidence. Shortly thereafter, Kain returns to Ariel, who has been acting as the player's guide throughout the game, and it is here that the plot finally returns to the Nemesis army shown to us in the Oracle's cave.
Are on the march from the north, crushing all in their path. 'Twas not too long ago that the Nemesis was known as William the Just, a caring and gentle benefactor of the land. But as his army grew in strength, and he himself grew in power, the veil of tyranny fell, and one kingdom was not enough.
Advising that the advancing army is marching on Willendorf, Ariel convinces Kain to interject and rally the army of King Otmar, or there may be no Nosgoth left to save. Gaining entry to Willendorf's courtyards, Kain is met with the countenance of a grieving and broken King Otmar. Harking back to the vision shown earlier by the Oracle, we learn the reason for his grief. His daughter's soul, trapped in a doll by the hand of Elzevir the Dollmaker, has rendered her lifeless. At the promise of command of the Army of Light, Willendorf's army, and the only hope of defeating the legions of the Nemesis, Kain quickly sets out and dispatches Elzevir, thus restoring King Otmar's will to defend his homeland, and they quickly begin the makings of the Battle of the Last Stand. It's important to note here that when interacting with the nearby township citizens, we hear the plight caused by William the Nemesis, saying, "We are doomed. An army approaches, and that fool Otmar does nothing but weep." And we learn that the people have lost confidence in their king, saying, "What has become of the Lion of Willendorf? Who will protect us from the Nemesis?" We also see the town of Stalberg ravaged by the Nemesis. Blood-soaked streets, impaled victims on pikes, corpses chained to fences. The game is deliberately framing William as a cruel tyrant king who must be stopped. even going so far as to have the bloodthirsty anti-hero Kain show disgust at the scars left on the land.
While I would not weep over lost tomes, I detested the sight of scars left upon the world at the hands of the Nemesis.
We, the player, are thus forced to consider the destruction we witnessed under the shadow of the colossal statue of William himself. With all of the pieces finally assembled on the board, and with a rallying cry, Otmar and Kain lead the army of Hope into desperate battle with the legions of the Nemesis.
For Nosgoth!
In what to this day is one of the most memorable and impressive playable scenes on the original PlayStation, Otmar and his men fight bravely against the oncoming tide of the Nemesis. The battle, however, is fought in vain. The army of Hope is quickly cut down, and Otmar falls with it. Kain, now operating on survival instinct alone, begins to feed on friend and foe alike, and in a moment of pure desperation, activates the time-streaming device as a final means of escape. Arriving 50 years before the battle that he just fought in, Kain sees the land before his eyes no longer ravaged, but flourishing. The imposing colossus of William is still being constructed. The townsfolk are not yet living in fear of William the Nemesis, but in adoration of William the Just, saying, "Our king is kind and fair. What fortunate citizens we are." Realizing his opportunity to stop the tyrant reign of William the Nemesis, Kain sets out to dispatch the king before he becomes the Nemesis to save Nosgoth from his cruel grip. Upon arriving in William's fortress, there are a few curiosities to consider. Although we are aware that we are long before the events of William's crusade, the game goes out of its way to remind the player of it. You still encounter William's soldiers, dressed in their imposing spiked armour and ready for their domination of Nosgoth. You stumble upon William's war room, its floor a map of the entirety of Nosgoth, betraying his ambitions of domination, and you pass by the construction of his imposing statue, a man ready to deify himself.
So it seemed I was in the land of William the Just, 50 years before the battle I had just escaped would take place.
We are in the time of William the Just, but he is already on his way to becoming the Nemesis. This allows the player and Kain to continue to feel righteous in their pursuit. There is one final clue the player is shown before the revelations are exposed completely. We overhear a conversation between William and the guardian of the Pillar of Time, Moebius. We see Moebius gift William with a blade much too akin to the Soul Reaver we ourselves are armed with. Finally reaching the Boy King, Kain and William do battle, each armed with an incarnation of the Reaver blade. Breaking William's blade during the battle and emerging victorious, Kain, yet again by happenstance, stumbles upon another time-streaming device, and believing he has set history right, returns to his own time. Arriving 50 years hence, Kain finds that he has indeed changed history. In what remains of William's fortress, he first encounters a peasant militia army of vampire hunters. Emerging beyond the fortress, beset by more of the angry mob, Kain hears screaming and smells outpourings of blood on the wind. Finally arriving at their source, an angry mob at the public execution of several vampires, led by Moebius, the horror of realization washes over him. In his hubris and haste, Kain had not noticed until this very moment that the Oracle of Nosgoth and Moebius the Time Streamer had been one and the same. Caught up in the Time Streamer's manipulations and blinded by his own pursuit of revenge, Kain had walked step by step along the path that Moebius had laid before him. In killing the Boy King, Kain had mythologized William the Just and ignited a vengeful hatred of the vampire race. In the 50 years that Kain had travelled in an instant, Moebius's mob had all but wiped out the entirety of vampire kind. Arriving just in time to witness the beheading of his benefactor Vorador, who had previously warned Kain about meddling in human affairs, Kain realizes that he is the last vampire standing. the unwilling instrument that sparked the genocide of his own race. Before Kain's earlier meeting with the Time Streamer in the Oracle's caves, we come across a museum of artifacts, the first clues to the ongoing machinations of Moebius. Seemingly unimportant on the first visit, we can now recognize each token after the revelations have been revealed. The bloodied guillotine we have just seen dispatch the vampire Vorador. The sigil of the Pillar of Time that we now recognize as the symbol of Moebius and his vampire crusade. The doll, now recognizable as that which trapped Ottmar's daughter's soul. A battered shield of Willendorf, as seen from the ill-fated Battle of the Last Stand. On first appearance, these trinkets mean nothing to Kain, but now after the betrayal, we can recognize these as breadcrumbs. A trophy cabinet laid before Kain to mock him in retrospect. A trail to show that Moebius had been the prime mover of time and destiny, and Kain his unwilling pawn. Given the direction the series takes after Blood Omen, we can easily make the argument that this deception at the hands of Moebius is what creates Elder Kain in the later games. Through the vampire genocide and the Nemesis' crusade, Kain witnesses the cruelty of humanity firsthand. This no doubt plays a part in his ultimate decision at the Pillars during the conclusion of the game, where he comes to agree with Vorador and damn Nosgoth.
We are gods. Dark gods. And it is our duty to thin the herd.
I have no doubt that during the events of Soul Reaver 1 and 2 especially, that Moebius' warning in the Oracle's cave that initially went unheeded is ringing in Kain's ears.
Yes, time. Unless you master it, it will master you.
Thank you for sticking around and making it this far into the video if you did. If you have any thoughts on the Legacy of Kain, particularly on Moebius' role as the Grand Manipulator, let's get a discussion going in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this and others besides. See you in the next one.
Time, Kain? Next time.